My name is Aurelie Ceinos. I'm working as climate change advisor for Care France, and I'm very glad to be virtually with you today to discuss human rights and climate change, and in particular the right to food. Care is working in more than 80 countries, and food security is really at the core of our action. But there are two important things that we wanted to highlight. The first thing that climate change has impacts on the food security of vulnerable people, but we wanted also to discuss the fact that all the climate change action, and especially climate change reduction action, have also impacts on the food security of vulnerable people. So we need to see the two sides of this coin. A few figures, there are a lot of different research that have highlighted the fact that for example, by 2080, we will have like 600 million people, additional people that will suffer from hunger. We expect also child malnutrition to rise by 20% by 2050. In Niger, for example, between 2006 and 2012, there have been like 4 food crises. In comparison, in the last 30 years, it was only 3 major food crises. So the reality is beginning to be very difficult for vulnerable people. So this was the first aspect of the impact of climate change on food security. But the other aspect that we wanted to highlight is the fact that in all action of mitigation, we have been seeing also impact on the food security of population. For example, when we have action about fighting against deforestation, we have new protected areas that are decided by governments but without prior consent of the vulnerable population, and that they are not able to access all the wild food, for example, that can grow in a forest, and that they are facing food insecurity because of this protected area, this new protected area. We have also been seeing new big dams being constructed to mitigate climate change without prior consent of the population, and so they can face displacement and then impact on their food security. So we are not saying that we do not need to fight climate change and reduce emission, but we need to have like social and environmental safeguards when we are dealing with climate change mitigation action. So what does that mean for the Paris Agreement and all the decisions that we want to see in Paris at the end of the year? We would make like 4 recommendations. The first one would be to stick to a 1.5 degree temperature rise. So we need a long-term goal in this agreement. The second recommendation will be to fund adaptation. We are lacking the funds to adapt. All the vulnerable population we are working with needs funds to implement the solution they have. The third aspect, and some other colleagues I'm sure have highlighted that, we need to ensure that all climate change action respect and promote the rights of vulnerable people, and it includes the right to food. Actually, in the agreement we are talking about food production mainly. So it's not enough. We need to talk about food security and the right to food. So we expect all parties to fight for the defense of this right and to put it in the agreement. And the last recommendation will be to include social and environmental safeguard for the Lima's Paris Action Agenda. Indeed, on top of the agreement, we will have a list of a lot of activities and initiatives to be included in an agenda of solution. And for now, all solutions can be part of this agenda. We want the civil society but also the government to put strict standards on what could be in and what needs to be out of this agenda. So to make sure that food security is really one big principle to be respected.
That's it for today, so thank you for your time and see you soon.